Jason Reid.
Hey, Russ, how you doing?
Fine. Of course, Jason Reid is a senior NFL writer for Andscape, ESPN's platform, exploring the intersections of sports, race, and culture. And of course, I've admired your work for a long time, man. You're a beast, and I'm really excited about your book. I can only talk to you about experiences that in my lifetime of the quarterbacks that I have watched. But the book is called The Rise of the Black Quarterback: What It Means for America. First of all, let me ask you, this book is just kind of like long overdue. It's something that a lot of people in NFL, they just really don't want to talk about. What basically inspired you to say, okay, it's time to talk about it?
Well, first of all, Russ, thank you for the kind words. I've been covering the NFL since 2007, and there are a lot of things that inspired me to want to write this book. Conversations with Doug Williams, the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl, and as well as the game's MVP award. Was one of the specific things. But just in general, as a black man, I knew something about the history of that position in the NFL and racism in the NFL. And since I've been covering the league, it just really hit me like, how did these black quarterbacks, this group that was incredibly marginalized, black men who aspired to play quarterback in the NFL, how did they rise up to this position of incredible power where the two highest paid players in the NFL are black quarterbacks, and there are 5 superstar black quarterbacks who are on the top 10 paid list, and they are people who influence the game and have all this power. So I really wanted to dive into, okay, how did this happen? How did this group that was considered stupid and lacking leadership ability get to this point of immense power and influence in the most popular and successful sport in the country?
And that's interesting, Jason. We're talking to Jason Reid, who's an incredible writer. And I have to say this. I go all the way back to James Shaq Harris. Are you familiar with James Shaq Harris?
Oh, Shaq is someone who has been a mentor to me, and he gave me a lot of time for the book. There's a chapter in the book on James Shaq Harris, who was a star quarterback at Grambling, which is historically black college university, played for the legendary Eddie Robinson, is a great friend and a mentor to Doug Williams, who also played at Grambling. But yeah, Shaq was one of my favorite chapters.
I was a Rams fan, and I played high school. I was a quarterback. And, of course, the stereotype was that the black quarterback usually wound up being a wide receiver if they got to the next level, or another position, or a running back, because the black quarterback, this was back in my day, just didn't have the mental capability to operate that position. I know you get into that.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big part of the book, that the so-called thinking man positions, the up the middle positions, quarterback, center, which is basically the quarterback of the offensive line because you have to make the line calls, and the middle linebacker, which is the quarterback of the defense. And, talking to Shaq and talking to Doug Williams and Warren Moon about the way things used to be, James Harris became the first black quarterback to start in a Pro Bowl, to start in a playoff game. He did that with the Los Angeles Rams before they left town and then came back. And the belief was by the people who controlled the NFL that black men could not read defenses, just weren't smart enough to do that. So you couldn't put them at the most important position because you would lose. That was the thinking.
And there was a time that
these guys changed that.
Mm-hmm. Because there was a time where, black folks weren't allowed in the NFL. And to give them like the most important position, and a lot of these athletes deserve that position. I remember James Shaq Harris. I was a fan of the Ram fan. The dude had a rocket for an arm, but as soon as there's a mistake, you can hear the underlying, your colleagues with the underlying racist kind of connotations as to a limited ability to think, and that bothered me for many, many years. So I'm excited about reading this book because I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to read this whole thing. But I have to tell you, man, it's like watching the Kaepernicks and watching the Lamar Jacksons and the Kyler Murrays and this new generation of black quarterbacks. It's got to give us we got to pause and go, hey, okay, this is long overdue. These people deserve these. They deserve these positions. One thing for you is like, I know that there's been a lot of athletes that has influenced a number of us to be bigger and better. Do you think that the black quarterback of this day is getting the respect due?
Okay, generally speaking, things have never been better for African American men in the NFL who play quarterback. I mean, the money, the attention they receive for their success on the field, the endorsements. So I just want to make that clear up front. However, as Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs pointed out last week, there is still something where you see some of the language and you wonder, okay, well, why am I being evaluated this way as opposed to somebody else? There were some anonymous quotes that came out basically saying that Mahomes, questioning, quite frankly, his ability to read defenses, and the fact that once he gets off his first read, looking at his first receiver, he has to play street ball, which is very coded language. And
yes.
Mahomes felt the same way because he addressed that situation. Yeah, so things. Look, there's no question that we are in the era of the black quarterback. There are superstar black quarterbacks in this league. There are young black quarterbacks up and coming. There's a pipeline coming from college. There's a pipeline coming from high school. But there is still coded language. We are still in America, and racism hasn't been eradicated. And
I think Lamar Jackson has endured some of that because they always make comments about his ability to run. And so, and sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but sometimes I think when you have, let's say, a black backup quarterback, sometimes it's like, okay, we're going to run this guy. He's going to run the ball as opposed to letting Tom Brady run that same play where he's running. I think that happens. And if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I can specifically talk about, first of all, what you mentioned about Lamar. Lamar, there's this lazy narrative around Lamar that he can't throw the ball. And I could point to metrics that show he's improved as a passer. Mm-hmm. But there were some anonymous quotes about how, well, if they have to pass, they being the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson's team, that they won't win. But the Ravens have won games with Lamar passing the ball. It was absurd. Those quotes are just ridiculous. And, back in week 5 last year, Lamar had one of the best passing games ever. I mean, not just for him, I'm just mean period. Mm-hmm. And he's improving as a passer. He's not a finished product yet. So, yeah, you see a lot of these things and you hear them. And, it's fair to ask, where's this stuff grounded? Well, where's this stuff coming from?
Yeah. The rise of the black quarterback, what it means for America. I know you're dealing with Colin Kaepernick's peaceful protest, which basically, really dealt with police brutality and bringing attention to it. And he paid the ultimate price with his career. What is your position on Colin's position?
Oh, there's no credible argument that can be made as to why Colin Kaepernick had to have his NFL career ended from a football standpoint. Okay? Like, Colin Kaepernick is not in the NFL because he angered owners, he angered team owners, because he took a stance and he brought attention to systemic racism and police brutality. Those are the reasons he's not in the NFL, because from a football standpoint, there was no credible argument that Colin Kaepernick has not been on an NFL roster. And you look at where this league is now, years after what Colin Kaepernick did, Patrick Mahomes in a video, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs in a video said to the league, Black Lives Matter. Like, you have to acknowledge this. And because of the power of Patrick Mahomes' success, the league did acknowledge it. So, but Colin Kaepernick started this movement, and he started a movement and was willing to stand on principle and risk losing his career. Mm-hmm. And he, in fact, did lose his playing career for no other reason. Team owners were not happy that he was potentially costing them money.
The book, by the way, The Rise of the Black Quarterback, What It Means for America. I got to ask you, because, many years on ESPN and all the work that you've done, you might be able to make a comment about, basically, we're talking about the Cleveland Browns quarterback who just received a 6-game suspension. We're talking about Deshaun Watson. What is your position on that? Do you feel that he should have got a six game or a whole year? Or do you have a position on it?
Oh, well, look, yeah. I mean, the league wanted a year-long suspension and a hefty fine. the disciplinary officer who was appointed by the league and the NFL Players Union looked at what was put in front of her. Her name is Sue Robinson. The league made its argument. The NFLPA and Deshaun Watson's people made their argument. And in her 15-page ruling, what she determined was, hey, what happened here was not right. And Deshaun's actions were not good based on what she could determine. But there wasn't enough evidence in her evaluation to warrant a year-long suspension. Now, and we have to remember, the NFL personal conduct policy, you don't have to be charged with a crime. You don't have to be convicted of anything. But 2 grand juries in Houston declined to indict Deshaun Watson. And in making her ruling, Sue Robinson determined there just wasn't enough evidence to warrant a year-long suspension. Now, the league can appeal, and Deshaun's people have already said they are not going to appeal. Now, will the league appeal? Look, the league looks horrible in this because the reality of it is public opinion is that Deshaun should have received more disciplinary action. So it'll be interesting to see if the league does move forward and appeal.
Well, you look at the owner of the New England Patriots where he had his issue. I don't remember him getting suspended. Ben Roethlisberger, we all know about his being accused of rape, which is huge. And I don't want to minimize all the victims involved with Deshaun Watson, but it just seems like there might be a little double standard. Now, Ben received a 6-game suspension, okay? You think that was the bar that they set for Deshaun?
Well, I do in terms of the suspension. I mean, when you read the NFL personal conduct policy, given what Sue Robinson ruled, I'm not shocked that that's the ruling given the policy. Now, as far as Robert Kraft, you referenced him. Robert Kraft isn't subject to the NFL personal conduct policy. That's clearly about that is specifically related to players. So I get what you're saying. The optics aren't good, but it's not comparable under the collective bargaining agreement. But look, we're really talking about optics here, and the optics about the Watson disciplinary action, they're not good, and that's why the NFL went into this knowing this, which is why it pushed for a year suspension and a hefty fine.
Jason, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. The book, by the way, y'all, you guys got to check it out. The Rise of the Black Quarterback, What It Means for America. I cannot wait to pour through this, man. This is I'm a huge fan. I played the position, so I can kind of relate, but on a high school level. But I knew that they never wanted me to pass the ball. They always wanted me to run, and I had a gun for an arm. So I see how that's what happened to a lot of these brothers when they got to the NFL, man. Run, don't throw. Okay. But listen, man, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.